John Wall, welcome to the Marketing Study Lab podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Peter.
Excellent, fantastic. I want to dive straight into it, as I always do, with my random opener, which will become apparent why I'm asking it when I ask you it, and then when we start to talk about your story and what you do at this moment in time. So my random opener to you is, how do you take your coffee?
Yes, that's an appropriate question. So there's two levels of that. There's a bunch of different ways that it gets made. And so there's a lot of things on that front. But I'm really one of those people that are kind of held in disdain in that I do sometimes like a little coffee with my cream and sugar. That's really how I tend to take it. So sugar is pretty much my drug of choice. So yeah, most people would not appreciate my morning Joe.
Oh yeah, I think that there's a lot of people frowning now. Oh, that's terrible, terrible.
The horror of ruining a fine coffee. And then it's funny too. So it's winter here. I actually have switched to hot coffee. I have an espresso machine, and I have bulletproof coffee too. I don't know if people are know about that. That's a whole nother nutrition thing that I mess around with. But when the weather gets warmer, I'll do cold brew, and iced coffee is actually my favorite, but it's just too cold for it right
now. my friend introduced me to iced coffee a couple of summers ago, and oh wow, made with the right coffee, amazing.
Yes, it's a perfectly satisfying drink for a hot day, that's for sure. I just have to do it before 2 p.m. I can't take the caffeine hit too late in the day.
Oh yeah, and then you're up all night, and then that just causes huge issues later on.
Exactly.
Love it. So let's go straight into your story and what brings you to this point in your career. And can you explain what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, sure. It's I've been doing marketing stuff for over 20 years, but there've been kind of 4 points along the way where things changed. The first was right out of university. I was actually in the insurance industry for a while, but that was when tech had just kind of come on the scene, and I was instantly pulled into tech. I've always messed around with gadgets, and then of course also loved audio, which is another thing. But so tech was the first jump, from insurance to tech. And then from there, I had an interesting time at a company where I actually got to meet Christopher Lochhead, who at that point was at Vantiv and doing tech. And he was, a big CMO, 3-time public company CMO. And he got me into startups, basically.
Okay.
He gave me a motivational speech to me and a couple of my coworkers. And it was kind of funny because he had been brought in to talk to us about marketing and what we could be doing. And he ended up saying to us, like, look, if you guys don't go to startups, you're going to miss the boat. Mm-hmm. And so to the chagrin of the company, they thought they were going to get all kinds of great tips. Meanwhile, we all quit within 6 months to join startups. He totally destroyed the department. But so startups was the next jump. And then the third major transition, once I made the startup jump, I did 5 startups over about 10 or 11 years, some of them privately backed, some venture backed. And I reached a point where I realized it wasn't as much about the opportunities, but the people that you work with. And so at this final stage now, I'm at a company called Trust Insights. And my partners, Christopher Penn and Katie Robert, are the kind of people that I wanted to work with. We were doing a lot of marketing analysis and data analysis, which is right up my alley. And of course, it's their specialty. But the big thing for me was to finally be working with people that I could appreciate working with and that I could trust at all times. And we all have financial stakes. So we're all on the same page and we're all, kind of on the right team. Over the past 4 or 5 years, I've kind of made that transition of, and we joke about it all the time. We've all made other people lots of money. And we've decided that, well, now maybe it's time we try and just do this for ourselves.
That's cool. So what does your day-to-day job look like? What are you doing on a daily basis?
Sure. Yeah. So Trust Insights, we light up dark data. That's the short answer of what we do. And so there's a bunch of ways we do that for customers. But so Christopher and Katie were at Shift Communications for a number of years doing a big PR house here in the States. And over time, they found that they were doing more and more analysis of marketing and basically measuring what was working and not working. And they found out eventually that they even had clients who didn't care about the PR stuff. They wanted to bring them in just to measure everything, all their marketing programs across the board. And so about 2.5 years ago, they finally decided that, look, we should just break off on our own and do marketing analytics as our meat and potatoes, and we can run this ourselves. And then, so that was kind of preordained from them. They totally had that map and put that together. And then on the side, I have actually for I don't know, 16 years or something like that, worked with Christopher Penn because he was into podcasting back in like 2005. And so as they got up and running, after about a year or so, I said, look, we noticed that, more than half of the leads and referrals were coming in from the podcast. And it just made sense that, look, I'm already talking to these people. I can come in and help you guys grow this business. And so I came on kind of as the business development partner, or sales guy, whatever you want to call it, but to basically find new customers for Trust Insights. And yeah, we've had a blast of it.
So Trust Insights is the company. Do you want to just talk briefly about the podcast? Because you haven't actually mentioned it yet.
Yeah, sure. So Marketing Over Coffee is a around 20-minute weekly cast. The format now is we tend to alternate weeks. Usually on Chris Penn weeks, we're talking about topical things, and he's giving actionable tips on, what is happening right now and where to go. And then on alternating weeks, I usually get a special guest. And a lot of times it's authors. We've been fortunate. We've had some really great guests like Seth Godin and Simon Sinek, David Meerman Scott, Mitch Joel, Chris Brogan, Ty Pennington, all kinds of people from a lot of different walks. But yeah, we've just had a blast doing this cast. I mean, we started in 2007, so it's,
wow.
We're going on 14 years. But yeah, it's just been fantastic. We love the audience. It's so great to, kind of pretty much any show that I go to, I can run into listeners of the podcast and we can talk about marketing stuff. We can kind of, and this goes all the way back to even like 2000 when blogging first started. For me, it was this big thing of like when you go out with your family, there's nobody you can talk to about what you do as a marketer. Like nobody understands SEO or lead gen or, marketing automation. Forget it. Like no, they just get a glazed over look and don't understand. And so much of this was being able to talk to other people who do know what your daily struggles are, the challenges you face. And then to be able to, the icing on the cake is to be able to share feedback on stuff that works and doesn't work and actually be able to do your job better. And so, yeah, the podcast has always been kind of like that drink after work where people are just talking about what's, working and not working, but we get to share it with the whole world. Yeah, it's been a wonderful gift.
That's really cool. And obviously the links will be in the show notes for anybody that wants to subscribe to it. Suggest you do. Really cool. Love it. So part of this podcast is providing actionable tips or things that people need to know so they can action upon or go and do their further research into it. And I know your specialism is machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all those cool things that we think at some point are going to take over the world and probably the human race will end. But as everybody thinks about these, it always comes with a hefty price tag. So what I'd like to chat to you about today is how we can utilize like machine learning, AI, and all those types of things, tools and whatever you want to bring along, a few tips and what we need to look at without breaking the bank, if you like. How can we do this? Can you help us?
Yeah, sure. And well, it helps a bit to take a look back. And, this wave of machine learning and artificial intelligence stuff for marketing is a little bit different in that, artificial intelligence has been around. I think the term was started in 1956. Some folks out of MIT were having an academic meeting. And so a lot of these ideas have been around forever in technological terms. I mean, 60 years in tech terms is infinity, basically, because it's about, 10 years for every year. And so really all artificial intelligence is, Seth Godin has a great definition for this. It's something like artificial intelligence is just what we're expecting computers to be able to do about 5 to 10 years from now. And, that's all it really is. And machine learning is just the ability to churn through tons of information. But it's interesting that, so even, back in the 50s and 60s, they were talking about this, but it's only been in about the last 10 years where processing power has gotten so strong and so cheap that a lot of the stuff that was developed decades ago is finally now able to get into the hands of anyone. We can get these tools. So if you're using R in our studio, you're able to, for free, just get in and do stuff. And Python, of course, if you learn Python, you're able to kind of get your files in order, get your data together, which is actually a huge part of this. But there's kind of a bright line of what you can use and what you can start with. And it really comes down to you either make the leap and go over to R and to Python and data tools and figure out how to use that stuff, which will unlock that. And it's just interesting in that that stuff is free, so there's no expense. So it's there's no money out of your pocket, but the problem is it takes time to learn these tools and to get good at them. So there is an expense in that if you're going to do this, you're going to lose time. So you can decide to go that route, become a marketing analytics professional, or the other route is just there are a bunch of tools out there that are already using this stuff, and it's just that you don't realize that it's artificial intelligence or machine learning because they don't use those phrases. And to be honest, like that's how the industry goes. Like 20 years ago, people were saying artificial intelligence will be able to scan everything on the web. And well, that happened, except now we call it search engines. We don't call it machine learning or artificial intelligence. It gets a term and it gets attached to a tool, and then it becomes its own industry. And then people suddenly say, AI is the next thing. That's artificial intelligence. Okay. So, but short list of stuff that you can do. Google Analytics is, that's churning through piles and piles of data to give you actionable insights. So that's number one for us. Google Trends is another area where you can see predictive stuff. You can kind of look at what's gone on in the past and then be able to get some idea of what's going to happen in the future. So those are two areas where you can jump on board. Just being good at graphing and clustering data, if you can even get into Tableau, that's a little bit, I don't know the latest state of that. I know that was acquired by Salesforce.com, so I don't know where the line is of kind of what's free and what's not free, but even if it becomes expensive, I'm sure there will be more and more plugins to, just visualize your Salesforce data and put that to work for you. So that's another one. Attribution models, driver analysis, that's something that we put a lot of machine learning towards, because in the past there's been a lot of academic and practical research kind of just of my marketing and sales, what actually drives the business. And so we do a lot of work on that, and that's a place to throw machine learning. But that's a whole lot of show up and throw up there, me throwing stuff at you.
Yeah, sure.
There's plenty of different ways to go, and we can talk about anything that where you'd like to focus first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say the majority of listeners will either be working for a business or own a small business. If they're looking for, and I know this is massively open to the market and the industry, but if they're looking to create efficiencies, what tools should we be using that are easy to use and easy to implement, like off the bat?
Yeah, Google Analytics is the first, run. You've got to have that. Put that on your website, be able to try and tell where the traffic's coming from, see what's going on. And then the first big part of that is establishing goals. So you want to set up the goals for your site as far as, in a perfect world, you're going to have a sale if you have some kind of online sale. But a lot of companies, whether it's a more complicated sale, if it's a B2B sale that just can't even be done online, you can still set up other goals as far as, newsletter subscriptions or demo requests, just anything, so that you ultimately want to get to a point where you have a system built where you can say, like, okay, if we put in money here, we can bet that it's going to get at least this much traffic. And out of that traffic, X percent of that is going to make it all the way through the end of the funnel to want to do more business and do stuff with us. So building that customer funnel, the lead prospect funnel, whatever you want to call it, having the goals around it. And then your UTM codes, the whole source tracking thing of having your procedure defined as far as like, okay, anytime anybody shares a link, here's where you go build the link so that it is feeding the results into Google Analytics so we can see what's going on and where it's going.
Okay, that's really interesting. So that's sort of when people are on your site, and Google Analytics is really good at that. Is there anything you suggest we do to get people or work out where people are coming from? I know Google Analytics gives you a bit of information, but is there any other tools that provide more top of the funnel information to get people onto that site?
There's different levels of that. I mean, the UTM codes are number one if you can fully automate it. For smaller businesses, the thing that you usually just want to do is, as part of the first engagement, when you finally get that first call or request for more info, go capture, hey, how did you hear about us? Where did you come from? So many businesses fail to do that, but that needs to be right in your CRM system. You need to have a field. And the way to do that is, as you get started, you want to have that be an open text field. People should just be able to write anything in there so they can put a real detailed description of met David at this event. and he saw us in this publication or whatever, but you record as much info as you can. And so then as your cycle goes on, so after you usually start quarterly, you can get that whole list at the end of the quarter and look at them and find the themes.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal of that is that eventually over time, you want to reach a point where you'll still keep that open text field there to catch all the info, but the second field you'll have will be a drop down. And so that you can start to bucket these things.
Okay.
And so like in the previous example, you'd say, oh, well, so that was an event, was the first touch. And you'll ultimately want to get to a point where those drop downs match directly to your financial categories in your marketing budget. So then you'll be able to say, okay, when we spend money in this segment here, we tend to see this kind of return on, the money that we spend there. And then as, on an annual basis, then you can start to ask yourself questions like, okay, if we double the spend there, is it going to go up or down? Or, this channel here, we don't seem to ever get anything. Should we really throw some money at it to test it? Or do we put the money elsewhere where we know we're going to get it? And there's a whole science to that too, but there's kind of, as you get started, and for smaller businesses, a good rule of thumb is you want to have 3 campaigns going on at any time, just be throwing money at 3 things. And, when you find a winner, you throw everything on the winner. You invest like 80, 10, 10 in the other 2 channels until you find other winners. But you really usually want to tap out a channel because there's usually economies of scale and there's a learning curve. Like if you start with Facebook ads and trade shows and PR, right? Mm-hmm. If you find that Facebook ads are actually working for you, you double down, triple down on the Facebook ads until you start to see a loss. Because, what we've seen is that you tend to get better and better at it, and you tend to improve your returns as you get more granular and smarter about what you're doing.
Okay. So with that in mind, a lot of what you've just been saying there, it seems to be more the quantitative, the numbers. Would you suggest people look further afield, like you were saying, with a CRM, you get a bit more detailed qualitative information, or would you start with the numbers first and then put a bit more meat on the bone, or how do you structure
that? That's a good question. I mean, and that really gets to the core of the whole marketer's challenge is that, you'll have all this data, but then ultimately you have to make it just a decision with imperfect data. And where do you want to go and what you want to do. The best practice for that is hopefully like a good example is with Facebook ads are just great in that you can run a whole batch of different topics on Facebook ads just to see kind of what the general temperature is out there. So if you're considering like 10 different marketing programs, create a Facebook ad for each of them and throw it out there for a week and just see what happens. That's a great way for, even just a couple $100, you could at least find out that like, oh, there's a vein here. Like, we get 20 times the response on when we talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to give yourself an indicator of where to jump next is valuable. But yeah, ultimately there's no guarantees. This is where you have to be bold and just make something and throw it out there and hope you can live with the result.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's all learning, testing, failing all the time. Is there a certain size of data set that's either optimal or a minimum data set that you need to make decisions? Or is it whatever data you've got, use it?
Yeah, well, the big thing for us is always statistically relevant. Do you have enough so that mathematically you're at least saying you've got, you'd love to be at 90% certainty, with like a 5% margin of error so that kind of what you're doing and where you're going. And we can give you some links. There's calculators to those kinds of things. You can of throw in some numbers as far as what your email campaigns are doing. But I had some very early in my career, I had some great advice from the president who was just saying that, well, to stay within 2 standard deviations, if you have a sample size of 30, if your results are 30, like if you've got 30 clicks, that at least odds are you probably have a 2 out of 3 chance of being right with your data. Mm-hmm. And because for smaller businesses, that's just always the struggle is never getting enough data, right? Like you mail 3,000 email and you get 7 responses to A and 5 to B. And it's like, well, there's really nothing statistically relevant there at all. So it's pretty much a wash. Like you might bet on the 7, but really the numbers say that there's nothing going there. So shooting to get to that 30 mark is, is great. But then it's really just, it's like more is better, you know, and just the more data you can get, the better your odds of being able to dial in and see what's going on. But yeah, again, for smaller businesses, a lot of times you're just going to have to, you know, take your best gut and see what you can do. One thing on that front is everybody does hope that like you get crowned a champion, but what we've seen over time is what you actually see is you weed out the losers. You know, you'll do a campaign, you'll test 5 campaigns over 4 months, and you'll find that 2 of those campaigns just like never got any clicks or any impact. And so you can throw those away. And so there's benefit that to be able to, you know, throw out the stuff that's just absolutely a total failure. And so that happens, that you will see. But yeah, getting champions, that's roll the dice.
Yeah, sure. If you were going to spend any money on any type of tool or software that's out there, what would you be going to?
Oh, that's a great question, because there's so many different places to go. I guess, you know, it's never tool driven for us. You know, you don't drive with the tools. You look at what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, and then the tools will come from that. So in fact, we have our traction framework that we break down into 3 segments. There's really only 3 things you can do, right? You can do product marketing. You can make your product better, which is fine. You can generate awareness. So that's the whole marketing PR function, you know, getting people to know that it's out there. And then there's sales, you know, just having people bang on doors and do the hard work of like, okay, this is out there, but now let's talk to people and find out, you know, are they really going to give us cash to do this, which is a huge question. So those are the 3 major channels. And then each of those has subsections of things to do. The product one is pretty cut and dry. It's pretty much you either build the product or you build things. The one thing is you can bake marketing into a product. You know, you always get a million tired examples of Hotmail and things like that, where, you know, when people use it, they also are given an incentive to make it spread. And so that can have huge returns, but not every product can do that. And then the sales thing too is pretty straightforward. It's kind of like you've got this person and you're giving them a toolbox to go get stuff done. And a lot of times sales tools do come to the top of the pile just because that's the bottom of the funnel. You know, it's if you've got 50 leads in front of the sales guys, if you can give them a 10% lift, that money goes right to the bottom line. So sales tools tend to be focused on pretty early in the game. And yeah, we look at CRM, you know, that tends to be the thing just because everybody wants to know what the customer's up to and where they're going. So CRM is usually at the top of the list. And then in that middle marketing PR one though, there's over a dozen different things that you can do. And so we normally say, again, grab 3 and be testing 3 at all times. And so there's all different tools on all different fronts for that. But, you know, Google Analytics is free, is always on the tool stack. CRM is on the tool stack. After that, it pretty much gets into what you want to do. A lot of folks would say email marketing automation. Okay. You know, because that tends to be marketing to your house list, tends to be for most businesses, that's the best. And you own that at all times. Like you could dump money into Facebook ads and Google ads, but you know, if those environments change, you could lose everything. Same thing with social platforms. Like you can dump all this time and money into social platforms and end up having the platform pulled out from under you. So you can lose your money there, but your email list is your list and it doesn't go anywhere. So yeah, those are, you know, again, CRM, Google Analytics, email marketing, those would probably be the 3 that we see most often, but then, you know, a whole batch of other tools depending on what you want to do.
Sure. So I think probably the number one, or might not be number one, but the one thing that people always go on about and look at is Google and getting, you know, number one, or at least on that first page. Have you got any tips or any advice on what Google look for or what we should be doing in your expertise?
Yeah, sure. So that's another area where you can take advantage of the machine learning that's been done by the tools that are out there. And in full disclosure, Ahrefs is a sponsor of Marketing Over Coffee, but they are they came to us because we use them for everything that we do.
But they are cool anyway, so that's absolutely fine.
They support the community. They are all in. But the big thing with them is that they cover the whole gamut, in that if you don't know what you're doing at all, you can just log into the tool, set it up and say, okay, here's my domain, here's my 5 competitors. show me what everybody's doing and how it's working.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do have the other end of it where like you can export all that data. And, that's what Chris does at Trust Insights. He exports everything and runs further analysis against it, to try and predict the future and do a bunch of other crazy stuff. But for somebody that's just jumping in and getting running with it, you want to go ahead and you see what you're doing, see which of your pages are generating the most traffic, try and figure out what those pages have in common, see if there's anything you can clone there. If you find out that, when we share video, it tends to do a lot better, maybe you should be doing video all the time. But then the other big one is your competitors. See what pages they're scoring for keywords and topics, and go look at their topics and their posts, see what you can copy, see what you can improve upon. Because most often you'll find that one easy trick that everybody can do is go look at your 5 competitors, look at their 10 most popular pages, and basically, update what they've got there. Because you'll find that a lot of those pages may be 1 or more years old. And so just by having similar content that's been updated, Google will eventually switch to you if you've got better stuff. And then for customers too, we say the same thing for them. Go look at your own 10 pages and go update the 10 best ones every quarter if you can. Add new links, better content, just kind of continually update your stuff. Because we can see 20 to 40% lift on your web traffic just by regular updates on your most popular stuff.
Wow, that's really cool. Looking towards the future or the near future, if you like, what's your thoughts on voice? And is there anything we should be doing right now for voice?
Yeah, voice is a lot of people talking about voice. And it's interesting because the stakes are so high with voice, right? The problem with voice is, you can be page 1 results for all kinds of terms and be doing great. But when you ask a smart speaker, only number 1 gets said, and that's it. And so there's not a lot of advice that we can give on that front. I mean, one thing is to hold your brand. If people know you as, Kleenex or Guinness or something like that, well, if you ask Alexa for Guinness, you're going to hear about Guinness. You're not going to hear about other beverages. And so that will lock it in. And then I don't know, there's a whole nother wave there's just some stuff about this recently on how on the Google search results page on the right side, sometimes you get media clips. I've heard that those clips are actually where a lot of the audio search results come from. So if you can get on that right side with relevant audio or video clips, you increase your odds of making it into search results. But that's totally Wild West right now. It's kind of nobody really knows where to go and what to do. And the thing with that is it's totally walled garden private thing. I mean, whatever Amazon wants to do in their best interest, that's what's going to come back. So you really don't know what's going to go there. And then with Google Smart Speaker, I don't know, I guess it seems like with Google Smart Speaker, you would have better odds, and that Google's whole mission is to give you the best and most relevant results. That's what they want to do. Whereas with Amazon, it's, they want to sell more stuff. So they really have no incentive to it always giving the, best or most relevant answer, but they have an incentive to steer it towards, making sure you buy the right thing. Yeah,
sure. Where Google almost want you to click off their platform, where Amazon want you to stay on their platform.
Yeah, but it's funny. There's been a lot of the SEO eggheads have been really kind of digging into this because there has been a sea change in about, I don't know, maybe over like the past 3 years. Because it used to be just what you said. The big thing was the number 1 result would go straight to the site that was the lead thing. But now they've been experimenting a lot with, the first 3 or 4 positions being the answer to your question or a snippet and actually stealing the traffic away. And there are a lot of people not happy about that, because that is kind of up until now, it was always like we want to serve the world and push people to the right direction. But now it's more, well, we want to take the traffic. We don't want you to have a piece of it. So,
which I always find it interesting where Google sit, because like you rightly said, they want to provide the best answer to your question. That's kind of what they do. But to make money, they need the ads, and I'm talking about the search engine, and they've got a whole host of other things going on. But to make money, they want people to click on the ads that they think are most relevant. But they also want, like you said, for them to stay on Google. So by not clicking, it's like just so many different things going on that it's like, well, what do you want? And I don't think they're short of a few dollars anyway. So I don't think that really concerns them at the moment, but it's really interesting. Didn't think of that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and so a big part of that, like, why is it? You have that split direction, but when the traffic goes off, there's a good chance that they lose tracking after that point. They don't know where they're going. Whereas if they can keep them on Google properties, now they can continue to gather information and understand where people go and what they do. And that tracking everybody, that's really at the core of things. Understanding, where the traffic ends up and where they want to get to. That gives them additional insight that they're doing more and more of.
Sure, and it all comes back to data at the end of the day. So just more than an actionable tip, look into the future. What do we think it holds then? What's the future holding with, let's class it as artificial intelligence, but as we know, we'll never fulfill artificial intelligence because it's the next thing that we're never going to get to. And when we get to it, it won't be artificial intelligence. But what does the future hold then?
Yeah, so it's a great question because it's not the future of AI, but it's like, what are the things that in marketing and sales that our lives are going to change by putting this stuff to use and what to work on. And there's 5 areas that we've identified as huge opportunities. So one is text mining, the ability to just grab 85,000 articles and in 2 minutes be able to find the 10 most popular and best articles or the 10 most referenced articles. So text mining is big. Related to that is network graphing, being able to look at, say, an event and all the social media traffic from an event and be able to determine who are the people that were most influential at that event. Like, who are the people that said stuff that got shared and passed around? Not who has the most followers or the most clicks, but who actually comes up with the best content. So network graphing. We use data clustering is useful to marketers, just be able to take huge sets of data and bundle them so that you can see where the best pages of yours are, or where the best content is, or what marketing programs are driving the most results. So that's big. And then that, of course, also leads into attribution of just being able to measure, hey, when we spend money, how much do we make back on it? And then the last one is predictive, being able to, if you have so much data that you can at least start to get an idea of, like, okay, we know that every June we need to double down on the types of content we create on these 5 topics, because we know that in the summer, halloumi cheese gets all the searches because it's a grillable cheese. So if you're a cheese manufacturer or a cheese vendor, you got to have some halloumi on hand for June, July, August, and you don't want to be stuck with that halloumi in November, December, because otherwise it's going to sit around until next July or August. But so, yeah, those are the kind of the 5 fronts: the predictive, attribution, clustering, graphing, and text mining. Those are all applications that we hope to see baked into more tools over the next couple of years.
I love the fact that you went with cheese as the example as well. That's absolutely fantastic. Who doesn't love halloumi? I mean, come on, it's the best cheese in the world.
Right. I don't think I've eaten halloumi. The other one that popped out, cheddar, is always on fire in November and around the Christmas season, and mozzarella bubbles up during the Super Bowl in the end of January. So we have up on the TI site, there's the whole cheese forecast, because it's funny, a lot of the clients we work with do not want to share anything that we tons of customers that we do stuff and they don't want the rest of the world to know their secret sauce. And so we came up with the cheese report, and that's just been the twice annual cheese report will keep you up to date on what types of cheese are hot and where you should be putting your cheese investment.
And that is integral to any marketer or anyone for that matter. It's got to be done. So
that can't have enough cheese.
Too right. It's so versatile. Like, people that unless you're allergic, people that don't like cheese. I mean, come on, have a word.
Can't be trusted.
Yeah, absolutely cannot be trusted, especially with other people's cheese. That's like, don't go there. Right. John, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Sure. Yes. Well, let's see how sharp I am still.
Excellent. So what's that source of info that you can't live without? Where do you go to for your information?
New York Times is the lead for me, I guess. I check the paper in the morning, and that's left over from the days when I would actually get a newspaper, but now it's online. But that's kind of the first. Oh, no, and actually I have to step that up. That's not true now. That is the one that I pay for and get, but I lead with BBC.
Wow.
That's the last bastion of true news. I don't know, maybe in the universe. It's because everything else in the United States is forced by advertising and clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and plus I do love getting an impartial third view of the United States. It's much better to see. So yeah, BBC first.
Excellent. What was the last thing you remember Googling?
The last thing I remember, well, I just have to look on my desktop. I have it right up here. It's funny that doesn't come right back to
Cheese.
to mind. Yeah, right, to cheese. It's funny it's not about cheese. My son asked this morning about Batman versus Darth Vader, and so we dug that out. Which
that's just crazy, because I've just done an interview and same question, what's the last thing you remember Googling? And it was a Star Wars question.
Oh yeah.
And this week, someone asked me a quiz question. They were at a quiz and they said, who's Boba Fett's father? And so I replied with what I thought. And then I thought, hang on, let me just double check it. So I Googled it and I was right, but I was also wrong, because it's Jango Fett, but he hasn't got a father because he's a clone.
Oh.
So I still haven't found out what the quiz answer was to that. But yeah, that's the second time on the podcast I've mentioned that as well.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, and if you haven't seen Batman versus Darth Vader, it's done by some group out of Los Angeles. I mean, it is like top cinematic quality. I mean, it could be out of a movie. So definitely check it out. If you're a Star Wars or a Batman fan, you'll definitely get a kick. And the important thing with it is there's two versions. There's an alternate ending too, so you can see it go both ways. But yeah, check that out.
Okay, yeah, definitely. If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Oh man, I think it'd be hold Apple until 700 or something like that. Give myself a stock tip would be the best way to go.
Yeah, that's Back to the Future too. That Sports Almanac.
Oh no, that's terrible. Yeah, I guess that makes me a biff. That's not a good thing. I'm trying to think if there's any other wiser advice, something more sage rather than just make money. And I think unfortunately, I have it with a bias. Like if I went back and said something like take more risk or don't be afraid to go off, like my younger self wouldn't listen to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever. So yeah, and then stock tips still probably the best way to go.
Okay. What's the most important thing to know about marketing right now, or in marketing?
Oh, that's a great question. Most important thing this is a mantra that, especially like in crazy times, I always fall back on. It's find customer, solve their problem, make them happy, take the money. Like that's really all any of this is. It's you can get wrapped up in the shiny objects and get worried about the economy and all that, but it really just comes down to, be curious, find something to help somebody else out and make them happy so that they keep you as a client, and then everything else will take care of itself.
Absolutely. And all this information and data and hardware, software, tools, and all that we've got, it is really the basics that it comes down to. All these things help and get closer to solving those problems, but it's always those simplistic steps that you just demonstrated there. Superb. So, John, final question, most important one. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, Trust Insights or Marketing Over Coffee, where should they go?
Yeah, marketingovercoffee.com is the easiest place to go. Just check it out over there. We have a link to the most popular episodes. So if you want on one page, you can see some of our top 10, the most popular stuff, but it's a great place to listen. And then, trustinsights.ai, and I'm on Twitter at John J. Wall, and all the social channels everywhere. But Marketing Over Coffee has links to everything else. You can start there.
Fantastic, John. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I enjoyed it.